All right, welcome to the Krueger Show, everybody. Bright and early on a Friday. I say bright and early, it's 10 a.m., but you know what? I'm a little hoarse because last night we went 3 hours on the post game. Let's just say there was a lot to talk about as the Warriors gagged in the fourth quarter and the Celtics take game one of the NBA Finals. And a lot of people looking forward to this morning's live stream because Grant Napier's in the house, longtime voice of the Sacramento Kings. I think one of my favorite voices on the NBA. Grant, walk us off the ledge. 40-16, Boston outscored the Warriors in the fourth quarter on the Warriors' home floor, and a 12-point lead entering the fourth quarter turned into a rout, and the Celtics take game one convincingly, 120-108. Give me your reaction.
All right, let me back up. First of all, before the series began, I picked the Warriors to win this series in 7 games, and I thought in order for Boston to win the championship, they would have to win 2 games on the Warriors' home court, because I have no doubt in my mind that the Warriors are going to be able to go to Boston and win at least 1 game. So they were halfway there. That's a big game one. A couple of things that surprised me a little bit about last night. I didn't think the Celtics could beat the Warriors at their own game, and they did, shooting over 50% from 3. You know, Jason Tatum did not shoot the ball well, but he had 13 assists. But we know that that's not going to be the norm going forward. Tatum is going to score. I saw what happened in the fourth quarter last night, Larry, as one of those things. It's an aberration. I'm not going to go overboard on it. You know, you've been watching the game for a long time. I've been watching the NBA for a long time. When teams get hot like that, and it is collective, and their three-point shooting is just falling. I mean, how many times do we talk about that with the Warriors? When they're making threes, they're not going to be beat. The three-point shot is so important to the way the game is played today that when you have a team that just won't miss, and last night in the fourth quarter was one of those nights. Now, what does it do, Larry? You know this. It puts immense pressure on the Warriors for Sunday. But who better than the Warriors to deal with pressure? They've seen it all. They've done it all. I expect Golden State to bounce back on Sunday in even this series going back to Boston. I would be almost shocked. I'll use the word shocked. And a lot of times I'll say very surprised. I would be shocked if the Warriors lose game 2 on Sunday. Somehow, some way, they'll figure out a way to win. Larry, I know at halftime the Celtics had the lead. Warriors always seem to play well in the third, and they did. Can you imagine what the odds would have been if somebody had told you that the fourth quarter score was going to be as lopsided as it was? And here's one other aspect to the game. And I thought that experience would be a real key in this series. It had no bearing at all on what happened last night in the fourth quarter. The Celtics, who, by the way, are an excellent road team. Forget about the Nets.
They're very good on the road.
Forget about the Nets. They won 2 games in Milwaukee. They won 2 games in Miami, including a crucial Game 7. And here's the other aspect that we forget. If you go back to February, very few people thought they would see a Golden State-Boston NBA Finals. Both teams were kind of treading water. We knew that in order for the Warriors to get there, they'd have to get healthy. They did. But the Celtics were terrible when we hit the month of February. No one's played better than them. So maybe people are not giving them enough credit, Larry. They're a damn good basketball team. I'm not saying they're going to win the series, but the fact that they're able to win as much as they do on the road is a real measuring stick to me when I judge a team.
One of the things that happened in the last series was that Derek White got in an unbelievable rhythm outside the arc, and he carried it right on into game 1. And it's like they gave him a lot of good looks, and he knocked him down. Al Horford the same. The ball's coming out of Al Horford's hand very naturally from beyond the arc. And those 2 guys couldn't miss. Horford 6 of 8 on threes. White 5 of 8 on threes. I mean, those guys torched the Nets. Now, Marcus Smart shot the 3 ball well as well. He had 4 of 7, most of those in the first half. I just think that Golden State has got to make White and Horford feel their defensive pressure a little bit, or White's going to keep putting those down. He's in a rhythm right now, and
Yes, he is.
they're going to have to, the same way they're going to have to, you have to disrupt some players' rhythm. You got to disrupt the shooter's rhythm in this case, and Derek White. If Derek White continues to go for 20 plus, Golden State's in trouble.
They are. You and I. The last time we talked, the Boston-Miami series was still going on, so we didn't know who the Warriors would play. We also both agreed that Boston would be a more formidable challenge for them. Before the series began, what was your pick? Because I never got it.
I actually picked the Warriors to win in 6.
Okay.
I said I thought, and I came out and I called each game. I said Boston gets game 1. I really thought Boston was going to take game 1.
Why? Why did you think that?
Well, because to me, in when I've been covering sports, it seems like the team there's rest versus rust, and when you get a day or two, that's rest. When you get 3 or more, that's rust. And Golden State had basically dialed it down, got the rest, but then got a couple extra days. And to me, Boston coming out of that Miami series where they had to go 7 and it was hard fought. There's an edge that you have coming out of that you carry into the next series. So I like Boston to win game 1. I like the Warriors to win game 2. I like the Warriors to win game 3 in Boston. I like the Celtics to win game 4 in Boston. I think it's invariably going to be 2-2 coming back here for game 5.
I agree.
And I think the Warriors win game 5 at home, and I think they finish it out in Boston in 6. That's how I see it. I do think Boston is a formidable opponent, but Golden State's experience and their depth, I think, is going to rule the day by the time the series is over.
So you and I are spot on, with the only exception is I didn't say Boston would win game 1, but I thought they would win one of the first 2 games. Again, there's nothing that I've seen in this postseason that would lead me to believe otherwise. If you can win in Milwaukee and you can win in Miami, there's no reason to think that, the Celtics aren't going to win a game in San Francisco. I'm with you on the 2-2. I think this series will be tied 2-2. The only difference that I see with you, I'm going to give it an extra game. I see this series going the distance. Again, we talk about 3-point shooting. We talk about it all the time. The teams that make the threes, you talk about White, you talk about Horford, they're generally going to win games. They're not going to shoot like that every night. The Warriors will get better rounded production offensively. If you had told me the final score before the game began, but you didn't tell me who would have the 120, I would say, the Warriors are going to win game 1. That surprises me a little bit, Larry. The number of points that the Celtics scored last night surprises me. Yes, I know it's hand in hand with their 3-point shooting, but I'm still surprised by that. I thought this series, if Boston was going to win games, it would be around 106, 104, 105, 102. I thought the scores would be a little bit lower. That surprised me a little bit last night.
Yeah, no, I think it has surprised a lot of people. I'll tell you one thing that was a bad omen for Golden State was it doesn't look like Gary Payton is going to be able to play in this series. Bad. And to me, if you said to me, why did I like the Warriors to win the series? I thought Golden State started these playoffs turning it over too much. Saw it in the Denver series, saw it early in the Memphis series. Then I kind of felt like they had their got their arms around it. They started taking better care of the basketball. So I think Golden State is going to minimize their turnovers, or at least keep them in the 13-14 range, which is for their body movement and ball movement, that's acceptable. Where I thought Golden State would have a real advantage in this series, and it didn't prove to be the case in game 1, is Boston doesn't have ball handlers. They don't have a point guard. And I thought GP2 would be healthy enough that he would be out there. And even if he wasn't, their other defenders would be able to force Boston into, 15 plus turnovers, and Golden State would have an advantage there. And that's not the way it shook out in game 1. The turnovers were 13 for the Celtics, 14 for the Warriors. So that was one area. And then also Golden State has beaten everybody on the glass. Last night it was even. Golden State has beaten everybody points in the paint. Last night they were -8. So, those were 3 areas that I thought would be advantage Golden State that at least in game 1, it wasn't.
When's the last time, and I know I'm throwing a curveball at you, you feel that the Warriors have faced a game with this much pressure on them? This is a very unfamiliar position for them to lose game one, particularly on their home floor. Again, I'm not worried about them rebounding, but this is a very unfamiliar position for them, is it not?
Yeah, I mean they got run in what, game 2 against was it Memphis?
Yeah, they got.
I think they
I
got
believe so.
they got beat in that game, and they could have been down 0-2 because they barely got game 1.
Right.
So, maybe game 3 in Memphis. I just think they're a pretty resilient team. I'll say this too. I think Kerr I wasn't sure about Kerr's minute distribution last night. I mean, he played Iguodala 12 minutes, but like Otto, here's the other thing. To me, a lot of great coaching, whether it be in baseball, football, basketball, it doesn't really matter. To me, what great coaching is play the hot hand.
Yep.
Whoever the hot hand is over the
Stay
long haul, play the hot hand.
Yep.
Last night we saw Boston. Tatum didn't have the hot hand. He's the best player on the team. Did he force up a bunch of bad shots? No, he wound up with 13 assists, and he kept finding Horford and White on the perimeter, and they knocked those shots down. Golden State had the hot shooter last night. His name was Otto Porter. Outside of Steph Curry, he was their hot hand, and he only took 5 shots. Feed him the ball. Let him shoot the ball. Instead, Draymond Green and Jordan Poole had a disastrous game. He looked so like he didn't know what he wanted to do on the offensive end. Green and Poole shot 1 of 9 on threes. First of all, why is Green taking 4 threes? I mean, just because Boston's going to give you that shot, that Boston's defensive rotations were perfect last night. They knew exactly who they wanted to defend on the perimeter. They knew exactly who they wanted to take the shot, and Golden State just kind of fell into it. I'm open, and the ball's in my hands. I guess I'll hoist. Do what you do. Draymond's a facilitator, a rebounder, a shot blocker. He's not a three-point shooter. He took 4 last night. He didn't make 1.
Too many.
To me, that's where Green and Poole kind of shot him out of it, and Golden State not feeding the ball more to Otto Porter, kind of showed that they weren't feeding the hot hand. They were trying to force a script instead of seeing what was in front of them.
Well, those are great points. So we expect certain adjustments now for game 2. All right. And I think you'll see some of those adjustments. I think you hit it right on the head as far as, not recognizing the hot hand and vice versa. I thought, Poole, bad. Draymond Green, shot selection. Yeah, we've seen him making them in the past, but in those situations, that's not what you want if you're the Golden State Warriors. And I don't think you're going to see that in game 2. So I think you make some really good points. Let me ask you, how did you feel the game was called last night? Do you have any issues with it?
There were a couple calls in the third quarter I thought were bad, but I mean, to me, in my estimation, if my complaints are 5 and under, I just don't really consider, and they don't come in the final sequences. I mean, to me, the Draymond Green foul against Horford in the third quarter was just great defense by Draymond, and he got called there. Then the worst call, the most egregious that I saw was Steph on the drive when Horford hacked him on the forearm. I mean, you're a former MVP at home in the finals, and your shooting arm gets hacked on the way to the bucket. You have to get that call every single time. Steph didn't get that call, so those were the 2 that stood out to me. What did you think of it?
I didn't have a problem with it. It did not determine the outcome of the game. And I'm like you. I look at officiating. Did it have a bearing on the outcome of the game? And the answer is no, it did not. The Celtics won the game fair and square. They were the better team last night. They didn't win the game because of an egregious call or bad call. So that's how I look at the game. As long as the officials do not determine the outcome of the game with a horrible call down the stretch or something like that, I'm fine with that. Again, I hate to simplify this, but based on what you said and based on what I said, we're both in agreement. We're just saying it different ways. These outcomes of games come down to really one thing. They come down to 3-point shooting. And you talked about Poole, you talked about Green, and we talked about the players for Boston. We talked about what Horford did. We talked about White did. We talked about what Smart did. That's really what these games are going to come down to. The entire league boils down to this. That's why we see so many lopsided games and lopsided quarters. Why was the fourth quarter so lopsided last night? Very simple. One team made their threes, the other team did not. I mean, I hate to say it, we wouldn't ever analyze a game like this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. It would have been, gee, so-and-so got in foul trouble down in the paint because they were going against Karl Malone, they were going against Shaq, they were going against Tim Duncan. I mean, we go on and on. The game is so different now. I mean, it really does depend on the team that is making their three-pointers. What did Boston make? Their first 7 threes of the fourth quarter, Larry?
Yeah,
That's
7 or 8.
Larry,
Yeah.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
I know. They just rained it. I can't remember an NBA game, especially of substance, where a team had a 12-point lead and it evaporated as fast as last night's did. I mean, it was just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Okay, let me throw a question to you that we debated in the post game. Jordan Poole looked awful. Now he doesn't give you much on the defensive end, and on the offensive end, I like him going to the hole. Last night, he just seemed like he's dribbling all over the place and he was losing the handle and he looked bad. He just looked bad. We debated it in the post game. Some of the guys felt like, the adjustment that Kerr needs to make for game 2 is to yank Jordan Poole and play Moses Moody. To me, that seems like a dramatic thing to do because Moody's 19 and Poole, Poole was, averaged 25 a game in the final couple months of the year. But it is the finals, and Poole has laid some multiple eggs along the way. I mean, he started the playoffs hot, but he's had a number of clunkers along the way here. What do you think? Moody's a good perimeter shooter. He's a bigger bodied guy. Would you take Poole's minutes and hand him to Moses Moody? My concern, Grant, is that Moses defers too much at this point. Is that he looks like, hey, I'm just out here with these other guys, and he doesn't want to take the shot with the clock ticking down. If he had played more this year, I'd probably feel more comfortable going to him.
We overvalued Poole a little bit because of how incredible he was in the Denver series, particularly when he started for Curry, when Curry was coming off the bench, and Poole was absolutely out of his mind. He's not that good, but he's not as bad as what we saw last night. I'm a little skeptical about all of a sudden taking a kid that's never been in this situation, who's 19, and putting him in that environment. I will say this about Steve Kerr. I think the guy's a fabulous coach, and I think sometimes the criticism, oh, well, gee, he's got great talent, he should win, is a little crazy. Steve Kerr's got a tremendous pulse on this team, and more times than not, he makes the right decision. I would not give up on Poole just yet. Now, I understand that Sunday, for all intents and purposes, is a must-win.
Right.
I mean, would you agree with me that if the Warriors lose Sunday, they're not going to win the series? Can we just be on the same page there?
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, well, in the history of the NBA Finals, who's lost the first 2 at home and won? It's happened, but I can't think of who.
Did Dallas do that against Miami, or did Dallas lose the first 2 games in Miami? I think Dallas lost the first 2 games of Miami. Because they won the championship on the road, so they would have lost 2 on the road. All right, so let me get back to your question. No, I would not do that. I would go with Poole. I have to let him know I still believe in him. Going to tell him, hey, go out and play your game. Don't worry about last night. Don't worry about what happened in game 1. We believe in you. Blah blah blah. I think the leadership of Curry and Thompson and all those other guys. But Larry, if he's on the court for a 4 or 5 minute stretch and he looks the way he did last night, then maybe if you're Steve Kerr, you have to go in that route. I wouldn't do it, though, before the game starts. I wouldn't change my game plan going into game 2 based on what I saw. Could have just had a bad night. Here's the thing that we know about Poole that we don't know about a kid that's 19. I already know what Poole can do. Okay, I've seen it. I mean, when he's right, he is really, really good. And there's no reason to think that he could not do that on Sunday. So I'm still going to go with him. I'm going to go with my initial rotation and game plan. And if something happens in the course that I have to make a change, then I'll do that. But if you end up doing that, do you lose him for the whole series? Have you now?
I think that has to be your plan. If you're going to go away from him, you got to almost bank that you potentially could lose him.
There's my point. So this is a very dicey situation. I don't see Boston shooting, 51% from 3 in game 2. If
75% in the fourth quarter, I think they shot.
And if they do, they're going to win. So I don't see that happening. I think the Warriors are still okay. Listen, no one thought they were going to sweep the Celtics, okay? And I don't think home court really means that much in this series. That's another thing I said on my show yesterday. Home court is big. It's not big in this series. The reason why, we already know Boston can win on the road. And, hey, we know without a shadow of a doubt, based on history, that the Warriors have no issues winning games on the road and really big games on the road. It doesn't faze them. So I think that, we make too much in this series about what home court is going to mean. I don't think it means much at all. I still would like to be on my home floor in Game 7 as opposed to being in Boston for Game 7. I don't think it's that big of an issue. I give it a slight edge. I don't give it any more than a slight edge. I'm telling you, you know this as well as I do. The Warriors going into Boston in that environment will not be affected in any way, shape, or form with how they play. They just won't. And Boston has had some real clunkers at home. They had clunkers at home against Milwaukee. They had clunkers at home against Miami. I mean, that's why I think this series is going 7 games.
Let's not talk specifically about Golden State. I mean, I want to get back to Golden State, but I want your thought on this, because it seems like we're in an era now where you have to have shooters at every spot. And if you're going to have a non-shooter on the floor, you can only have one. Correct. And Golden State, last night they had Looney, they have Green, they've got Iguodala, and I mean, Iguodala did shoot 3 of 4, and he made his only 3, but they've got some non-shooters out there. Where if you look at Boston, Tice hit a corner 3, Horford's hitting 3s. Their big men are shooting the ball, and you have to defend all 5 guys. Against Golden State, I was watching I looked at it again last night after the show, and Boston laid off of the Golden State non-shooters, and they had all kinds of people in the lane, and so that's why Draymond Green took 4 threes, because the ball cycled around to him, and he's wide open, and everybody else is being blanketed. I'm just kind of wondering what you think of Looney going forward. Would you like to see Bielitsa? I mean, they have Bielitsa on this roster. He can shoot the ball. He at least will make you honor the threat at the line. You can't just leave him there with nobody on him like they did in this first game. I mean, would you like to see Bielitsa take some of those minutes and try to put another shooter on the floor? And what kind of dynamic would that introduce?
His experience, both, in the NBA and his international competition, he's been on the big stage a lot, more so in the international competition than he has, over here in the NBA, just because of the teams that he's played for. I like Bielitsa. I don't think the moment's going to be too big for him. He's been there. He's done it. And again, big games in Europe are a big deal, and he's gone through all of that, the international competition, the Olympics. I do think that's a really good option. I'm not going to move away from your question. I'm going to get back to it, but I want to ask you this. What about Iguodala? What about his minutes in this series based on the inactivity and everything? Are we expecting too much from him? And how would you manage that if you're looking at that from Steve Kerr's perspective?
Well, it's funny. I think Kerr kind of force fed him a little bit. I mean, 12 minutes. He played well. He played with poise. He's a really smart player. So I don't think you ever lose playing Andre, because he's a good defender. He's a smart offensive player. But what you lose is spacing, because if they don't honor him from the perimeter, and now you're playing him with Green, and you're playing him with Looney. Right. Now they can really focus on your other 3 guys and kind of dare those guys to hoist. And I don't know. I'm not really sure exactly. I would have liked to have seen Otto Porter get a few more minutes, to be honest. I would have loved to have seen, Wiggins get a few more minutes. I mean, that's the other question. I mean, look at Boston's guys and what they played minute wise, and look at Golden State. Curry played 38 minutes. Maybe it's time for Kerr to play, Curry more like 40 minutes. Tatum played 42 minutes last night. He's their best player.
I guess the reason why
it's a tough call, because there's the Golden State's got a lot of moving parts here.
Yes, that's why I asked that question, because you talked about, you go with the hot guy, you ride the wave. Well, this is a team that just beat the Dallas Mavericks in 5 games. They were riding a wave without these players. Now all of a sudden, you get into another round, and you're putting players on the floor that did not play in the previous series, albeit they're good and you know what they can do. I just wonder if that messes with the rhythm of what you've established in the prior series. That's why I brought that up.
Yeah. There was a timeout last night And, they sometimes they'll give you the live mic, and all of a sudden you're getting a chance up close and personal to listen to an NBA player or some exchange between coaches and players. Well, last night we were privy to hear Marcus Smart talking to his teammates. And I don't know if you caught that, but I mean, this guy's not just a smart player. This guy could be a future NBA coach. I mean, he was describing in great detail how they were going to handle the pick and roll at the top and how to defend it and how he wanted to see it defended. And he was explaining to guys, you got to get up top and you got to jump it early and you can't wait for it and you got to be aggressive. And I just think that, I don't know. There's certain guys, Grant, that when the lights are shining bright, these guys come of age. In my mind, I don't know what Marcus Smart makes. I think it's like 10 or 12 million or something like that. He's worth every penny and then some. He looks like an all NBA performer every time he plays the Warriors.
The guy's really good. I've always felt the same thing, and he's tough as nails. He'll do a couple stupid things that will get him in trouble, and we know that. But he's got the grit. We use the term dog. He's a real dog. He's a talented dog. And what he does for that team defensively, I think overshadows what he can do for that team offensively. I think we talk about Marcus Smart, and the first thing that comes to your mind is your defense. But look at what he did last night. I was watching a game with the sound off, and I was watching a hockey game with the sound on, so I didn't hear that commentary. But, I mean, his body of work speaks for itself. And so, as we look towards game 2, a couple of things I really want to keep in mind. This is a whole new experience for the Celtics, all right? Before last night, no one on that bench had been in an NBA Finals game. Are they going to get careless and kind of get away from – are they going to be feeling too good about themselves going into game 2? Oh, gee, this is easy. We already won game 1. I know I'm exaggerating. I'm just trying to set the page for you because, again, I know what the Warriors are going to do. Again, I will be shocked, Larry, if Golden State loses and does not play their A game for 4 quarters. I expect Golden State to play an A game on Sunday. Anything less than an A game would really, really surprise me. I don't think Boston can duplicate what they did last night from 3. And if they do, then I'm going to be wrong, and you're going to be wrong, and Boston's going to win this series. I don't believe that they're going to be able to do that on back-to-back games in San Francisco.
I agree. Let's hit a couple more before we call it quits here. What do you think of Klay Thompson? I mean, Klay Thompson played 39 minutes. He was 6 of 14, 3 of 7 from beyond the arcs, 15 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists. Mm-hmm. Thompson is an interesting guy because it's like, he's such a great player. And yet there at times he looks just like the Klay Thompson of old. And then there's times where he doesn't look like the Klay Thompson of old at all. Like he's lost quite a bit on both sides of the floor. What do you see? I mean, you're probably more objective because you're not a Warrior fan and you don't watch him every single night.
No, I don't.
But where are you with Klay Thompson? Obviously, he tore the ACL, he tore the Achilles. The fact that he's even out there is an amazing thing. But did you expect how much regression, I guess, has there been in his game?
There has been some regression. You hit it right on the head. There are times when you wouldn't even know that he had those injuries, where you're just like, oh my gosh, wow, Klay Thompson is all the way back. But you have to be realistic about this with his injuries. But personally, if I'm Steve Kerr, I'm living and dying with Klay Thompson. Okay, I'm going to ride him. I'm going to let him be part of either our success or our failure. So I think they've made that commitment to Klay. I think that Klay will be there for the Warriors when they absolutely need him to be there. I think he is a player that Steve Kerr knows, regardless of what's happened in the past few years with his injuries, who he can count on. So if I'm looking at this from Kerr's perspective, I'm living and dying with Klay Thompson. I think at this juncture, at this point in the season, with maybe 6 games at the most left, unless he re-injures his ankle or his knee or another part of his body, I'm going with him. Of course, there's been some regression. How could there not be? I mean, he's had 2 serious injuries. And so, yes, there has. But I've also seen the glimpses, more than glimpses, of the Klay Thompson that's Klay Thompson. And I don't know, Larry, if the Warriors would win this series without Klay Thompson playing at a high level, not an all-star level, but at a high level, maybe at least an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. I don't think the Warriors win this series without that happening. They need Klay Thompson, and for that reason, I think Steve Kerr is going to continue to go to him.
Kerr went to a zone defense in the second half for small doses. What do you what's the wrinkle that you think may have some success trying to slow down Boston? Boston's got, if you look at their team, they've got, obviously Robert Williams is the big man in the middle, but you got Jaylen Brown, Smart, Horford, Tatum. They can all make threes. Grant Williams can shoot the three. White is obviously red hot from three. Tice can hit threes. What's the best defensive plan you think against Boston?
Fabulous question. I'm probably too old-fashioned when I make this statement. I don't believe that the defense in this day and age of the NBA can stop a team when they are shooting the ball very well. Good offense will beat good defense the way the game is played now in the NBA. So when you ask me what can they do, I hate to say this, they really have to hope that the Celtics don't shoot over 50% from three. Now, can you do a better job with their wide open threes? Yeah. And you know what, Larry? Last night there were too many uncontested three-pointers. So that can be corrected. But Larry, you watch the NBA as much as I do. The good players in this league still make threes even when they're contested. But it does make it a little bit more challenging and a little bit more difficult. Again, I hate to simplify this, but this series and then what we saw last night comes down to one thing: are you making your threes or not? It's the uncontested threes, Larry, that I saw last night that I would be a little alarmed with if I'm Golden State. They can and they must do a better job on closing out on some of those shooters. I mean, what happened in the fourth quarter last night? How that's going to happen from time to time. Collectively, everyone's making threes, but still, you can't have open threes. That's the issue. That's the area that I think the Warriors have to improve. But what can they do, Larry? I'm not really sure what they can do other than just making sure that they close out a little bit better on the open threes. But if Boston shoots collectively, because it wasn't just one guy, we saw what Curry did in the first quarter, right? He carried the team. He was unbelievable. It was one guy. And Larry, you can't stop Steph Curry when he's shooting like that. You just can't. Teams have tried it. They've been trying it for years and years and years. It's part of the game. It's going to happen. What Boston did last night in the fourth quarter, I'm not sure any team in the league could have slowed them down last night in the fourth quarter. I really believe that.
Ryan, our producer, wants to jump in here with a question or two, but I got one more for you before he does. Michael Wilbon made a great point in the pregame on ESPN. They're sitting outside the Chase Center. Chase Center is this beautiful. Have you been to the Chase yet? Been to the Chase Center? Yeah, it's beautiful. It's incredible. It's the outside is really beautiful, and there's got this massive screen in front of it. It's a great gathering spot for people. So Warrior fans, wall to wall, everybody's going crazy. All the fervor, excitement for Game 1. And Michael Wilbon looks around and he's like, "Magic, do you remember when you played in the finals? It was on tape delay after the evening news. Look what the finals has become. You're a guy who's seen the evolution of the NBA as well. I mean, it is pretty amazing. I mean, sometimes we don't take a second to, stop and smell the roses. I mean, the NBA has grown up from, I'm watching KPIX or whatever news, and here comes, by the way, stay tuned after the game for Game 1 of the NBA Finals. And it was like nothing. We're like, oh, yeah. And I watched it. I was the guy who stayed up at 11:30 and watched it at 11:30 because that's what we had. And we didn't even think anything of it. And it was like, no big deal. Now, look how big, the Super Bowl has gotten. Look how big the NBA Finals has gotten. I mean, it's like, it makes you wonder 50 years in the future when we're both dead and gone, what is this thing going to be? I mean, is this NBA Finals, are they going to shut down the country for 2 weeks? And I mean, it just seems like every year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's not just the NBA, it's really all the major sporting events.
I remember watching the Knicks and the Lakers in the 69-70 season and the epic finals where Willis Reed came out of the tunnel limping, and I had to listen to it on radio with Marv Albert. And it's really the reason why I got into broadcasting, because you couldn't watch the games live. You had to listen to them on radio, and Marv was great. So, yeah, I mean, everything's changed. I mean, think about the Super Bowl. I mean, good Lord, if you even go back to the Super Bowl, like I'll give you an example. I went to the Super Bowl in Pasadena, January 25th, 1987, the Giants and the Broncos, okay? I had 2 tickets because we were Giants season ticket holders and we won the lottery. So I went out. I was working in Illinois, and I was only making like $13,000 a year. I had 2 tickets. My buddy, also whose father used to play for the Giants, lived in L.A., and I get to L.A. on Saturday. I've never been to L.A. before. Afternoon, I land. It's 76 degrees. When I took off, it was 5 below zero.
Oh,
and
my
I
God.
thought I had died and gone to heaven. So we get to his place in Van Nuys with his brother, and I go, what are we going to do tonight? I'm all excited. I'm in L.A., and he looks at me and goes, what do you mean, what are we going to do? We're going to the game. I go, what do you mean we're going to the game? The game's tomorrow. He goes, we're going to the game. My brother rented an RV. So anyway, we get in the RV. We go to the trailer park, which is the RV park, right next to the Rose Bowl. And you can't make this up. We end up parking right next to John Elway's sister. Okay.
Really?
And all their, it was unbelievable. And the party was unbelievable. So I had 2 tickets, right? Now think about this, Larry. John Elway, Phil Simms, Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson, January 25th, 1987. The face value of my 2 tickets, 30-yard line, 25 rows off the field behind the Giants bench, $75 a piece. Okay?
Wow. Yeah.
I sold my 1 ticket that night in the parking lot where the party was going on outside the Rose Bowl for $750. Now, fast forward to the game that the Giants played against the Patriots in Indianapolis, not the first when they beat them when they were undefeated, but the second time they beat them. I had 3 tickets that I got through a friend who works for an NFL team. The face value of those tickets were $950. Okay? Now I'm looking at what the face value are for the tickets. So you ask me, what's it going to be like 30, 40, 50 years from now when we're not around? I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars to go to a major sporting event, right? But think about that, Larry. From 1987, face value $75 to, what was that, 2011 when I was at the Giants, Patriots in Indianapolis, or whatever, $950. Now they're a couple of thousand. What's it going to be like? Sports is amazing. It really is amazing.
It is amazing. And then I read yesterday that LeBron's a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
A billionaire. He's a basketball player, and he's a billionaire. A player, just the fact that a player could be a billionaire is amazing.
That's why players don't care when they're fined anymore. That's why you're seeing the issues, particularly in the NBA, when they curse at fans or they don't want to talk to the media, or Kyrie Irving doesn't want to do this, or, we saw, when they don't care. Draymond Green said it in the Memphis series when he gave the double bird to the fans. What did he say? He goes, I laugh at the fine. He goes, I'm making $25 million this year. I'm not worried about it. There's no deterrent, Larry, for the players to do things that they shouldn't do because they don't care if they're fined. Larry, them getting fined $50,000 is like you and I taking $1 out of our pocket.
Even if it's not fined, where's the urgency in Ben Simmons?
There is none.
Ben Simmons has got to work on his game. Yeah, or what? He's got 50. He's got 120 million coming his way. He's already got 50 million in the bank. You're going to tell him that he needs to do anything? Come on. Let's bring in Ryan Smith, who's our producer, who's a big NBA fan, and he was part of our post game last night. And he's got a couple of questions about the series that I'm sure he wants to throw your way. Good morning, Ryan.
Morning, guys. Also, I just have to say on that LeBron billionaire front. Of course, LeBron. There was it was no coincidence that story came out on game one, day of game one. Like LeBron wanted a little shine on the morning shows. That's okay. Anyway, so I've got one historical question for you, Grant, that I feel like you are very apt to answer, or perfect guy to answer in a X's and O's thing. So the X's and O's thing, I rewatched the fourth quarter early this morning.
Yep.
One thing that stood out that I kind of didn't realize as it was happening, because I thought Smart played such a good game, what Udoka did, and this is the kind of, you got to take your hat off to him. He did not put Smart back into the game until 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. That White Pritchard lineup got rolling, and he didn't mess with it. And I was hearing some people. I've been hearing people say, because Pritchard pretty much couldn't get on the floor in that Miami series because the way their offense, it's sort of like the Mavericks, like they just hunt the weak defender, and with Pritchard out there, you have a weak link. But the Warriors, they refuse to do that. They run their stuff. They run their stuff and they trust their stuff. How bad do you think things have to go before Steve Kerr, if they're going to run Pritchard out there? I mean, there was times I was watching where, Curry kind of had one-on-one with Pritchard, but they just kept running their stuff instead of just going, a little bit of ISO ball. Let's, go at the weak link type hunting offense. Like, do you think that there's any chance we see that?
Well, back to Udoka. I'm not surprised for his tutelage being with Pop for so long, both as a player and as an assistant coach. And I got to know Ime. He played with Sacramento for a short time. And I thought back then his basketball intellect was through the roof. So that, Pop has done that in the past. That doesn't surprise me. I think that and I understand you did a 3-hour show last night. And I get that you have thousands of people that, want to break down every play of every game. And I think we have a tendency to overanalyze these things. And I keep on going back to this. I look at the experience for Golden State, which obviously in the fourth quarter last night, you would say, Grant, what experience? You talk about X's and O's. We talk about executing. You talk about matchups. I'm a real believer in this. I believe that the game, and I hate to keep on going back to this, comes down to one simple aspect now, and it's three-point shooting. And I think we can talk about substitutions. We can talk about whether a player should do this or do that. If the Warriors are making their threes, they're going to win this series against Boston. They just are. Their shooters are too good. We can all acknowledge that offensively, you would take Golden State's team over Boston's team. I think everyone that covers the NBA, if you put their rosters next to each other and you said, which offense do you want going into this series, you would take Golden State's. What happened last night, in my opinion, in the fourth quarter was an aberration. You don't see that very often. You rarely see that. You rarely see that in the NBA Finals. So your question I get, this is always about adjustments. Coaches are always going to be making adjustments from game to game and within the game. But with all of the analyzing we do, we break down every aspect, minutes played, certain situations, certain matchups. I just think it really comes down to the team that shoots the three ball the best. And I hate to say that, Ryan, because I don't like the way the game is played now.
I know it's crappy to say that's the analysis, but it is kind of you can go game by game throughout the playoffs. There's a reason why there's been so many blowouts. And
I don't like the way the game is played now.
86 threes last night.
Yeah, it's not. I don't like the way baseball is played. I don't like the fact that you either hit the ball out of the park or you strike out. Now I know I'm over exaggerating a little bit, but I hate. I don't like what we're seeing in two great sports, both baseball and basketball. But I guess I could sit here and bitch and gripe. I don't think it's going to change in the near future. Although with my affiliation for 30 plus years with the NBA, the one thing they are not afraid to do, they're not afraid to tinker with the game. And if they feel that changes need to be made with rules, they did that for years in terms of improving offensive production. Offense sells. They want more offense. They want more offense. Well, now, in my opinion, they've gone overboard. They've crossed the line. And I talked about this with Larry, Ryan, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. Jerry Reynolds wanted to get rid of the corner three because he thinks it's too easy and the way the game is played. The game is not meant to come down on a 3-on-1 break and have a player pass up a wide open layup or dunk to kick out into the corner for a three. But that's the way the game is played. We didn't envision ever a 7-footer who would dominate in the low post, all of a sudden taking threes. Did we ever think we would see Joel Embiid stand on the three-point line and shoot threes? I mean, we can go on and on with that. I think the game has gone a little bit too far offensively, and I think it needs to be reeled back. Now, that's not going to happen Sunday or games 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. But again, I just really believe that these games come down to the team that shoots the three ball the best. And I hate to say that because I don't think that's good for the overall health of the sport moving forward.
Yeah, and honestly, versus the Mavericks, they had one game where they hit their threes, But I mean, we were pretty much, that was kind of our defense versus them. It was like, all right, we're going to let the others take their threes, and we don't think that they're going to knock them down in these pressure situations.
Exactly right.
That's what Boston did. And I totally get when Lucas says, I know this upset a lot of people, but even Draymond was saying it. When he came out and said that scoring in the NBA is so much easier than scoring in Europe, it's understandable. Like the way the rules are, it's so much more free. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But so here's my historical question, then I'll let you guys get back to it. So I was thinking, let's just say the Celtics do go on to win this series. Very, very, very possible at this point. I was trying to think of a team that's like a historic comp for them because, if you go through it in NBA history, usually the best guy on a title team, usually they do not win the title till they're, 27, 28. So I'm going to run down a few of these. LeBron was 27 when he won his first one. Curry, 27. Jordan, 28. KD, 28. Isaiah Thomas, 28. Shaq, 28. Pierce, 30. Wilt, 30. Hakeem, 31. Dirk, 31. Robertson, 32. Jerry West, 33. So just all that to say, I mean, what is like the historic comp for a team, I guess that's, very well-rounded, and then their superstar is 24 years old. It's pretty unique, seriously. And this actually makes me pretty mad, but the only two all-time great guys I could find that won it, like kind of as the best guy on the team under 24 were Larry Bird at 24 and Bill Russell at 24.
How old was Giannis last year?
Giannis?
Yeah, he was pretty young, 26 maybe.
Yeah, wait, what is he?
Something like that.
Right?
Yeah, something like that.
Last year.
He was what?
26.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I've never really given that thought, Ryan. That's a great job on your part to bring that up. What does it say? Is it an aberration, or is this going to be a new trend if Boston goes on to win? I think the bigger story is going to be on the other side because of the way our media works. You know it, and I know it. We're going to hear about Kevin Durant all summer. Kevin Durant should have never left the Warriors. A lot of people forget, for whatever reason, the Warriors won a championship without Durant. I don't know why people don't ever want to acknowledge that. But we know if the Warriors lose this series, it's going to be, Durant shouldn't have left. Look at what happened without Durant. Steph really can't win without Durant. We know that's going to be the talk all summer. Yep. It's going to drive everyone freaking crazy, but that's going to be the narrative.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, in this 3-point, the 3-point era that we're in, I got to ask you, Miami lost because Jimmy Butler took what I viewed as an ill-advised three. Now, you're there in South Florida. Yeah. Jimmy Butler's game is not the three ball. Miami had the momentum. It was a 17-point game in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. He had Al Horford in retreat mode, backpedaling. There was no help coming. If he makes the three, they've got a 1-point lead with 16 seconds left. So it wasn't like a dagger three to put the game away. And he was on the break, so he was moving forward. So he wasn't straight up and down. He was kind of drifting forward. To me, that was a huge classic error. There were a lot of people rushing to his defense, like just because Jimmy Butler has played big in that series, that you can't say that he blew it there at the end. So, Perk and all these other guys were backing him. But what do you think? I mean, what was the reaction, I guess, in Miami to Butler taking that three, and what was your kind of feeling on how that game ended? Because I thought that was Smart missed like 3 or 4 threes in a row. All the momentum was with Miami. All you had to do is go for the 2 and extend the game, and I think Miami wins that game.
Time and score and the situation, they didn't need a 3 there, right? And the floor was spread. He had a Horford. He was running, with a full head of steam, and he pulled up to take a 3. I made this point on my show. Even if he made the 3, Boston gets the ball back with plenty of time. And there might have been 2 or 3 possessions remaining in that game. To me, it was almost an all or nothing type of a shot. If it goes in, great. But, by the way, Boston's going to take a timeout. They still have plenty of time left to go on the clock. And if you don't make it and don't get the rebound, you're going to have a really difficult time winning the game. You know what, Larry? Spur of the moment. The guy had been phenomenal in Game 6, Game 7. I'm not going to crucify him for it. But in retrospect, it clearly was not the right decision. Clearly was not the right decision based on how much time was left and the score. And the way the defense had presented itself. Is there anyone that would think that Butler would not have been able to go right around Al Horford? I mean, do you believe, Larry, if
No,
Butler
I think it was I think the most likely scenario was the N1.
Exactly.
That he was going to go by him because Horford was in retreat mode. Right. He had no help. No help was coming. Butler's off the dribble. Probably goes right by him, gets an angle, lays it in, probably gets fouled.
You asked me what's the reaction in South Florida. The reaction for the most part in this fair weather fan part of the world that I live in is that they said, you know what, without Butler, they wouldn't even have won Game 6. Without Butler, they wouldn't have been in that position in Game 7. Right. And we can't get on a guy that really is largely responsible for us being here in a Game 7. So that's really what the most of the talk was down here.
Yeah. I mean, in the chat, we're getting the same thing. Totes McGoats, live and die with your superstar decisions, Larry. He says, how would you feel if Steph is in Butler's position? Steph shoots threes. Steph's game's threes. Butler's game's not threes. I got one last one for you, but first let's pay the bills and we'll come back. We'll get Grant's one quick thought on the Sacramento Kings coming up next. But first, a word from our sponsors. Larry Krueger here for Telmetrics. Thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics. If you're an occupational therapist, if you're an orthopedic surgeon, a chiropractor, a physical therapist of any kind, Telmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice and will greatly benefit your patients. Telmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in the clinical and the telehealth environments. So using Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So for all your sports injury needs, or if you're a physical rehabilitation specialist of any kind, make sure you use telmetrics.co, Telmetrix.co. And thanks to Casey Bateman and all the good people at Telmetrics for being a proud sponsor of the Krueger. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Dan Coach Emilio. Dan is a buddy, and he is a phenomenal retirement planning specialist. And you can contact him today at securemoney.com or at his number 925-628-9966. There's a lot of uncertainty in our world right now, and you want to make sure that your money is secure. That is the key. Danny's got 25 years of experience, born and raised right here in the Bay Area, and he can help you get an immediate 10% premium bonus on your principal retirement account. So give him a call, 925-628-9966. He'll make an appointment with you, and you can sit down. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a deal. He'll consult with you and come up with a strategy to get you going to where you want to be. Once again, 925-628-9966, securemoney.com on the web. And thanks to Dan Coach Emilio and all the people at Secure Money for being proud sponsors of the Krueger Show. Welcome back to the Krueger Show. If you're a supporter of the show, hit like and subscribe. And one more mention, my 12-year-old said to me, yeah, you got the YouTube show, Dad. You think you're cool, but you're nothing if you don't have merch. Well, to my 12-year-old, we've got merch. And thanks to Tony Casera and the good people at Casera's Italian Menswear. They are housing the Krueger Show t-shirts, and they're a proud sponsor of the show as well. The Krueger Show t-shirt, the Krueger Show podcast t-shirt is available there at their store in Dublin. Their address is 7372 San Ramon Road in Dublin, California. And go see Tony Casera and get yourself a Krueger Show t-shirt and support the show. And special thanks to our sponsor, New York Style Italian Sausage. That's right, NewYorkStyleSausage.com is their website. Phenomenal product, whether it's the breakfast sausage, the Italian mild, the Italian spicy, the chorizo. You cannot go wrong with New York Style Italian Sausage. Once again, NewYorkStyleSausage.com, often imitated, never equaled. And they're a proud sponsor of the Krueger Show. Thanks to them as well. All right. And Tom Pierce says in the chat, hit the like. It really helps Larry's show so others can find it. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Just click the subscription deal there, and you will be notified if you hit the notification bell every time we have a live stream. All right. One of the questions that comes up, and a lot of, there's so many Kings fans that Grant are still, they so much want to hear your opinion. And, and I know, the Kings are not in the playoffs. They're not in the finals, and the Warriors are the story, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you at least one Kings question for all the Kings fans. They've got the 4th pick.
Yep.
Jaden Ivey staring him in the face.
Yep.
He's electric with the ball in his hands. I saw him compared to Russell Westbrook. I do see that comparison. He's so fast going to the 10. Would you go with a Jaden Ivey and figure out your backcourt after that, what to do with Fox and how to make it all work?
Yep.
Or would you, a lot of rumors that the Kings may trade that pick and go for a veteran, and I'm not sure which veteran that would be, but, how would you play your hand if you're Monty McNair? You want Ivy, who's a blue chipper, or do you take a chance on moving that for a veteran and trying to build around Sabonis and Fox and what they already have, plus this new veteran?
Well, if I think Ivy is going to be that guy, then I'm going to take him if he's available at number 4. But personally, I think Monty McNair's got 1 year left to make this team a playoff team. And as good as Ivy might be, is he going to really put this team into that category in his rookie year? And I would say no. If it's me, I would trade that pick and an existing player to try to get a player that I already know can play. Like when they traded Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield, they got a 2-time All-Star in Sabonis. I already know what Sabonis can do. These kids now that are coming up through the college ranks, there were too many mistakes made with players that, as you label, are blue chippers. I mean, we saw it. You talk about De'Aaron Fox in that draft. Markelle Fultz went 1, mistake. Lonzo Ball went 2, mistake. Josh Jackson went 4, bust. Fox went 5. Personally, I'm not down with Fox being the long-term solution. He's played 5 years in the league. He still is an inconsistent shooter from 3. Is a low 70s from the free throw line. I don't want my point guard shooting 71, 72% in his career from the line. I don't want my point guard shooting less than 30% from 3, which is what Fox did last year. I'm not going to win with the way the NBA game is played now. So if it were me and there's a team out there that wants Fox, I'm going to do everything in my power to make that deal and then go from there. So I talk about this all the time on my show. If you look at the top 6 teams that made the playoffs in the West this year and just put them on the side, okay, and then you look at the teams that are 7, 8, 9, and 10. Minnesota was 7. The Clippers were 8, right? The Pelicans were 9, and the Spurs were 10. Other than the Spurs, I don't see any of those teams that the Kings are going to vault over based on who they draft this year. So if I'm Monty McNair, do I want to draft a player that I'm going to watch have success for the guy that's going to replace me? That's how I'm looking at it from Monty McNair's point of view. But again, if I think that player at 4 that's going to be there is special, and by special I mean a franchise-type impact player like Ja Morant, when they took him 2 and they moved up, or someone like that, then yes, I'm going to take that player. But I don't know if there's a player in the draft right now, Larry, that's going to come into Sacramento and make this team a playoff team next year. I don't see it.
How great would it ever be if we could get the Kings and the Warriors?
Yeah, epic.
The Warriors are this great title contender. The Kings had this magical run. Unfortunately, they didn't coincide. We never got a chance to see it. I would love to see the Kings
It would be great.
full bore against the Warriors at full bore, and what that would do to basketball is exploding in popularity. There's so many young fans. I love the vibe in the building. If you noticed, there were several times through the years, over the last decade, where I could pick and choose what Warrior game I wanted to go to. I always picked the Sacramento game. So one, I could come say hi to you, but also so I could see all my friends who would come down the I-80 and they would make that pilgrimage. And it's fun watching games on the road. And it's fun as a Warrior fan going up to the Golden One Center and meeting up with some of my Sac State buddies and having a couple pops and experiencing both arenas. Now you've got 2 world-class arenas and you've got, 2 fan bases that are very engaged. I would love to see at some point Kings Warriors in a playoff series, and what that would do to Northern California basketball. It would be awesome.
It's really almost impossible to believe that since the Kings moved from Kansas City in '85, that they and the Warriors have never been good at the same time. Never even been in the playoffs together at the same time. It's right. I mean, isn't that just? At least I don't believe they've ever been in the playoffs together at the same time. It's unfreaking believable that that's never happened. And I hate to say this, but by the time the Kings start to get good, if that ever happens, you're going to see Curry retiring and all, so maybe we're just going to, but
flip cycles.
The Kings have a long way to go to get good, in my opinion. They're not close.
No, I know. Grant, tell people, who are catching you, and maybe they're regulars on this show, but they have yet to find your show. Tell them where they can find it, when you do it, and how things are going for you.
Yeah, things are going well. I have a podcast that comes out twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. You can check it out on your favorite podcast platform, or just go to my website, ifyoudontlikethat.com. I also do a live show every day at 3 o'clock Pacific on Listen app, where you can call in and ask me questions. That's going very well. And I do a show on No Filter Network. We had a great show yesterday with Sean Salisbury. So, I'm around. But again, my work mostly ifyoudontlikethat.com. And I'm great to see how well you're doing, man. I'm looking at your subscription list. It keeps on going up and up, and your sponsor. So I'm proud of you, man. You're kicking ass. Good job.
Thank you, man. It's a long time ago since I was an intern for you. I love you like a brother, and
you're awesome.
and anything I can do to support you and your endeavors, let me know. And onward and upward, man. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to